She's in violation of Modesty Code 3.1b. I'm correcting it now.
That's what Marbel Royston, vice president of the Ambergate Hollow HOA, said right before she reached down and yanked my daughter's skirt in front of the community clubhouse arch. 3 kids saw it. 2 senior neighbors turned away in shock. 1 HOA camera caught the motion, and so did mine. Lyra didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just stood there, frozen like her mind had detached from her body. She's 14, Marbel added with a shrug, turning to the onlookers, old enough to dress with some dignity. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, is that I wasn't relying on her community security feed. I was already watching live from the municipal server I maintain. I paused the frame, zoomed, enhanced the angle from pole 42C. That camera doesn't belong to the HOA. It still pings back to my encrypted diagnostic server. They thought they'd erase the proof. They didn't even know where the real proof lived. And if you've ever had a daughter, or if you've ever watched a powerful stranger publicly humiliate someone too young to fight back, then you understand why this moment wasn't going to pass quietly. Hit subscribe right now. What happened after that 1 second of contact triggered a domino collapse that ripped through the entire HOA board, and it started with one unedited feed. My name is Callum Rain. I don't carry a badge. I don't run for office. But I build the infrastructure that both of those jobs rely on. I manage municipal surveillance integrity, city crosswalk feeds, traffic cams, public transit overlays. If your street has a pole camera or a directional mic for safety audits, odds are I've secured its firmware and know who's accessed its history. So, when Marbel grabbed my daughter's skirt and tried to bury it under HOA privacy redaction, she didn't just cross a moral line. She entered my jurisdiction. That archway where Lyra stood, it's more than vines and shade. It's where my wife used to sit with her every weekend, reading fantasy novels, 1 chapter at a time, even during chemo. When the hospital visits got worse, we added solar string lights around the arch so Lyra could sit there alone and feel like her mother hadn't left entirely. She hasn't let anyone touch that bench since the funeral. That skirt she wore, she stitched it herself. The floral slit was crooked and she was proud of it. It was the first thing she made since her mom died. That morning was the first time she wore it outside the house. But to Marbel Royston, that crooked stitch was rebellion. She didn't see grief. She saw inappropriateness. And she reacted like a monarch scolding a servant. See, Marbel's the kind of woman who carries a tape measure in her purse and calls it a decorum tool. She's got laminated pages from a 1996 HOA standards binder and uses the word modesty like a weapon. The whole board lets her run wild because no one wants to challenge her. That ends now. When I got home, Lyra was already upstairs. The skirt was stuffed into the laundry bin like it had done something wrong. She hadn't said a word. I didn't ask questions. I opened my laptop, connected to the surveillance merge feed, and started reviewing raw data. Frame by frame, I clipped the moment Marbel's hand closed on that skirt. Then, I pulled the HOA feed and compared timestamps. Their version cut out 7 seconds before contact. Mine didn't. And neither did the neighbor's doorbell cam across the street. Audio only, but crystal clear. A trembling voice saying, "Please don't." I archived the full sequence, validated it with hash keys, and I prepped my demo. Because Marbel Royston didn't just touch my daughter, she touched the one person in this neighborhood who could prove it, using tools she didn't even know existed. And before this was over, she was going to wish that camera had been blind. By morning, the notice was already taped to our door. Violation. Inappropriate attire, minor resident. Cited under Ambergate Hollow, Residential Covenant 3.1b. Fine, $250, remedial action. Attendance at Youth Decorum and Modesty Seminar, mandatory for both parent and child. The envelope was embossed with the HOA seal, pressed into cream stock like it came from a country club. And right there, just below the formal text, was Marbel Royston's signature in blue ink. No remorse, just policy. Lyra didn't come down for breakfast. Her bedroom door was shut tight, same as last night. I didn't push. She'd speak when she was ready. For now, I had other voices to listen to. Downstairs, I cued the footage again. This time, I didn't just watch the act. I listened to what surrounded it. Voices, footsteps. The exact moment the HOA camera shifted angle, Not when it should have, but when someone manually forced a reposition. Timestamp 16:21 Time of contact 16:1:11. 4 seconds shaved, just enough to cut the truth at the root. I already knew how the HOA managed their feeds, contracted through a third-party firm that used an outdated archival suite vulnerable to timestamp spoofing. They couldn't forge my angle, but they could make it look like Marbel never touched Lyra at all. I documented the discrepancy and cross-synced audio. I'd build the full chain later. First, I needed to see how far this poison had spread. I walked to the clubhouse just before noon, cutting through the side path behind the tennis courts. A sandwich board stood out front with fresh markers scrawled in calligraphy. Tomorrow, youth decorum and modesty workshop. Attendance mandatory for all offenders and guardians. Offenders? Inside, the air smelled like citrus cleaner and stale coffee. Folding chairs were arranged in rows, and a projector flickered with a title slide. Protecting Community Standards for the Next Generation. Marbel stood near the podium, chatting with 2 other board members, both older men who had long ago stopped listening and just signed what she gave them. She spotted me and smiled like we were old neighbors, like she hadn't just committed an assault and called it governance. "Mr. Rainey," she said smoothly, "we received the incident report. I do hope Lyra will be attending the seminar. It's important she understands expectations in a community like ours." "She understands more than you think," I said flatly. Marbel's smile thinned. "We're not here to punish. We're here to preserve values. Ambergate has a reputation to protect." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. From the back corner, I caught whispers. 2 parents, one holding a flyer, the other holding her child's hand a little too tightly. Another girl had been cited, maybe 2, maybe more. I watched a father frown as he read the rules aloud. No visible midriff, no high-cut hems, no shoulder straps thinner than 2 inches. That wasn't policy, that was dogma, and she was enforcing it by force. Back home, I opened Lyra's door quietly. She was curled in her reading chair, headphones on, eyes red but dry. She didn't look up, just held the book tighter to her chest. "You're not in trouble," I said softly, "and you didn't do anything wrong." She nodded once, barely. "I need you to know," I continued, "that everything she said, every way she made you feel, we're not letting that stand." Silence, then a whisper. She said I was a bad example. I sat down on the edge of the bed. My voice stayed steady. "She's wrong. She's scared of what she doesn't understand. And I understand a lot more than she thinks." I didn't show her the footage, not yet, but I would, in time, when it wouldn't feel like reliving it, but reclaiming it. Outside, the HOA newsletter hit inboxes by afternoon. A glowing paragraph praised Marbel's swift response to a modesty incident involving a young resident. They never used Lyra's name, but they didn't need to. Everyone would know by tomorrow, and that was fine, because the one thing none of them understood, not Marbel, not her clipboard followers, not the whispering neighbors pretending to be neutral, was that they'd just tried to bury a violation in the one place designed to expose it. The breezeway camera, the traffic node, the doorbell mic. They didn't just mess with my daughter, they picked the wrong damn engineer. Nevin Dyer adjusted the angle of the clubhouse camera like he was folding laundry. No urgency, no questions, just a quiet, practiced flick of the wrist. It was late afternoon, the breeze too warm for long sleeves, but he still wore that faded security jacket zipped to the collar. "Back it up 2 degrees, Marbel said from the side, not looking at him. "We don't want blind spots." He nodded once, then tapped the console. The display flickered as the view shifted, just enough to cut the corner where Lyra had been, standing the day before. I was watching from outside the glass, not hidden, just silent. Nevin caught sight of me and froze, fingers still hovering over the touchpad. Marbel turned. "Mr. Rainey." I said nothing, just looked at the live feed behind her. She glanced over her shoulder, lips pressing into a thin smile. "We're adjusting angles for the seminar tomorrow. It'll be recorded for training purposes." "Convenient," I said. Something flickered behind Nevin's eyes. It wasn't guilt, not quite. More like friction. 2 truths grinding against each other until something sparked. He dropped his gaze and stepped back from the screen. "Your daughter's not the first, you know," he said quietly, almost too low to catch. Marbel shot him a look sharp enough to draw blood. "Nevin, she's the first one who didn't cry," he added, louder now. I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" But he was already walking away, muttering something about a sensor check near the west gate. Marbel folded her arms. "Don't mind him. Nevin takes things personally, especially when it involves children. His sister had issues. Anyway, we're nearly done here." She turned back to the screen, dismissing me like a stray thought. But I wasn't focused on her anymore. Nevin Dyer. I knew the name. He wasn't board. He wasn't staff. He was listed as a volunteer liaison, someone who managed visual continuity. HOA talk for someone with just enough access to be useful, and just little enough authority to be disposable. And yet, there he was, handling the controls, trimming the edges, creating blind spots, or maybe knowing exactly what was being cut. That night, I waited, not for confrontation, for confirmation. At 10:37 p.m., I got it. A system ping from the HOA network node. Unsecured port access, remote login, the user, Dyer, NVN. He wasn't trying to hide it. He didn't even use a proxy. I traced the session, brief connection to archive security footage. Manual export attempt, interrupted. Then a drop. A single clip copied and quarantined in an isolated folder. I mirrored the sequence. Watched the screen jump just before the footage started playing. It was the same clip I had. Marbel reaching out, Lyra stepping back, the moment her voice cracked into, "Please don't." Nevin hadn't tried to delete it. He tried to save it, and someone had stopped him. I closed the window and leaned back, pulse dull in my ears. This wasn't just about one moment anymore. This was about control, erasure, sanitizing truth until the victims looked complicit. The next morning, I spotted him outside the maintenance shed near the tennis courts. He was coiling wire, eyes low, movements mechanical. "Nevin," I said, stepping closer. He didn't look up. "You're not supposed to approach me." I didn't, just happened to be walking this way. A beat passed. "She didn't do anything wrong," he said. "Your girl." "I know. She made a book skirt. My sister used to do that. Took scraps from library discard bins and stitched in quotes under the hems." I waited. "She got cited twice," he continued, "before you moved here. Once for a tank top, once for a skirt she wore to a book fair. Marbel said she was gathering attention. That was the phrase. I nodded slowly. "And the footage?" "Gone. Both times. Whole segments. Said the system failed, but it didn't. I knew it didn't." This time, he looked at me. "They made me click the purge." He didn't cry, but his voice cracked, and that was worse. "I'm not asking you to do anything illegal," I said. "But if something crosses your desk again, if you see them tampering, bring it to me. That's all I ask." He didn't nod. He didn't promise. He just turned back to the wires. But when I walked away, I heard the quiet click of his phone camera behind me, aimed at the power meter box beside the clubhouse entrance. Time-stamped, unrequested, evidence. The first flyer showed up in the laundry room of the clubhouse, printed in color, laminated, tacked above the detergent dispenser. It was the same title from the seminar notice: Youth Decorum and Modesty, Community Responsibility Begins at Home. But now it had bullet points, red, underlined. Girls must wear skirts no shorter than 3 inches above the knee. No form-fitting or activewear attire. Shoulders should be covered unless by board-approved swimwear. Violations will result in progressive penalties and community corrective action. At the bottom, in cursive, was the signature again: Marbel Royston, VP HOA Compliance. I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't expect it, but because of what wasn't written, what was implied. Girls, no mention of boys. No line about tank tops or bare torsos for the baseball kids in July. Just rules aimed at young women like Lyra. And this time, it wasn't just a violation. It was corrective action. I took the flyer down, folded it, and stuffed it in my back pocket. I wasn't going to fight this one with a phone call. I had a different plan. By afternoon, 2 more had popped up. One on the HOA bulletin board outside the pool gate, another near the bike rack by the community park. I didn't remove those. Not yet. I wanted to see who noticed. Later that evening, I sat in the back row of the community theater. Not a real theater, just a repurposed room in the clubhouse with 30 chairs and a projector. Marbel stood up front, smiling like she was hosting a brunch. 24 parents sat with arms crossed, lips pressed. A few had their kids beside them, fidgeting in dress shirts and long skirts. "This isn't punishment," Marbel said, clicking through a slideshow. "It's protection. We are safeguarding our children's future by teaching them how to present themselves respectfully. We are a community of standards, and those standards begin with the way we dress." The screen changed. A silhouette of a child figure, skirt overlay, measurement lines, guidelines. A red X next to a photo of a teenager at the beach, circled in bold. No one clapped, but no one left either. I waited until the lights came up, and then I stood. "My daughter is not here tonight," I said, "because she didn't agree to be the part of your lesson plan, because she was touched without consent, and because she's not your object lesson." Several parents turned. A woman near the aisle shifted uncomfortably. Marbel's face stayed neutral. "This seminar was unanimously approved," she replied calmly. "I didn't vote on it." "You're not on the board." "I don't have to be. Neither are the rest of them." I swept a hand at the parents. "This community is not a monarchy. You don't get to redraw the lines and call it democracy. You cited my daughter, and now you're trying to rewrite the rules around her so it looks justified." Marbel's voice tightened, but she kept the smile. "If you have concerns, you can request a hearing. Otherwise, this space is for constructive participation only." That was her tell. Whenever someone threatened her version of order, she offered a polite exit. She'd been running these meetings for years, like a wedding coordinator. Nothing ever derailed. But this time, someone else stood. "I didn't agree to this either," said the woman from the aisle. "My daughter wore leggings last week and got a warning. She's 9. Marbel blinked. Another voice followed. "My niece cried all night after her citation. She thought she was going to be expelled from the pool." Then a third. "You told my wife our child's outfit was an invitation for attention. She's 10. Marbel turned, eyes scanning the room now, not smiling anymore. She tried to regroup, raising a hand for calm. "This isn't about any one child," she said. "It's about all of us." But she was wrong. Because everyone in that room was thinking about one child, their own. And once you made them picture that, being grabbed, being humiliated, being told they were inappropriate, it stopped being abstract. The spell broke. I left before it turned into shouting. I didn't need a scene. I needed a trigger, something to shift the room. And now I had it. The next step wasn't debate. It was proof. I didn't sleep that night. I just watched the feed. 3 angles. One from pole 42C at the edge of the breezeway. One from the HOA's rotating clubhouse cam, which conveniently froze at the exact second Marbel stepped forward. And one from the doorbell of Unit 16B, where an old retired school teacher had a smart camera angled just enough to catch movement and audio across the street. "Please don't." Lyra's voice was faint, strained, like she already knew it wouldn't matter. I looped it again. I wanted to forget it. I also wanted to burn it into the wall of every room Marbel walked into. I queued all 3 videos into a time sync interface I'd built for transit collisions. Normally, it was used to resolve conflicting footage in liability cases, syncs angles down to the frame, overlays acceleration, impact arcs, audio trails, but it worked just fine for a different kind of crash. Marbel's hand, Lyra's step back, the shift in light as her skirt was pulled down, and the mic picking up not just my daughter's whisper, but the laugh of a board member off screen. The HOA feed, as expected, jumped. Exactly 7 seconds missing. At 16:21:3, Lyra was standing straight. At 16:21:11, she was pulling her skirt back up. The HOA claimed a sensor error. I ran a digital watermark audit. No internal anomaly, no system fault. They didn't lose the footage. They cut it. At 2:43 a.m., I exported the composite file to a secured drive. Labeled it Breezeway Incident. 3-angle verification, unaltered. I encrypted it, timestamped it, logged the chain of custody through 2 off-site backups. Then I killed the screen and sat in silence. Because now, it wasn't a question of if I had proof. It was who needed to see it first. At 9 sharp, I drove to Municipal Systems HQ. I wasn't dressed for war, just khakis and a button-down, but my badge got me through. I took the stairs 2 at a time, passed through the secure server ring, and entered Diagnostics Room 2, the one we used when demonstrating smart city integrations to law enforcement. Rel Morns was already waiting. Police chief, tie always slightly crooked, eyes bagged from too many hours and too little gratitude. We'd worked together twice before, traffic pattern review, once on a pedestrian case. He trusted me, mostly because I didn't talk unless I had something real to say. "You said it was urgent," he said, sipping black coffee. I plugged in the drive. "It is." I hit play. 3 feeds ran in perfect sync. No music, no voiceover, just the raw footage. At the moment of contact, Rel leaned forward. When the audio played, Lyra's voice, soft and clear, saying, "Please don't," he stopped breathing for half a second. When the HOA feed jumped, then resumed, and the sync trail exposed the 7-second deletion, he set the coffee down without looking. When it ended, he didn't speak, just let the silence stretch like a rope pulled tight. "How many people know about this?" he finally asked. "Just me, and now you." He nodded slowly. "Is the girl okay?" "She will be." "Has she talked to anyone?" "Not yet. She's quiet." He sat back in his chair. "And the HOA is pretending none of this happened. They've already issued a violation, framed her as a decency issue. There's a seminar tonight to correct the behavior." Rel's face darkened. "And Marbel Royston?" he asked. "Still vice president, still enforcing rules that don't exist." He looked at the screen again. The moment paused. Maribel's fingers closed on fabric. Lyra's head turned away. "I want a copy," he said. "Everything, raw and synced. Include your digital audit. You'll get it in an hour." He didn't say thank you, just stood. Then, on his way out, he muttered, "Tell your daughter she's not alone." I waited 5 minutes after he left. Then I uploaded a duplicate to a private link. I wasn't done yet, because the police chief had just watched the truth unfold, but the board hadn't, and they were next. I didn't tell Lyra about the footage, not yet. Not because I didn't think she could handle it, but because I wanted the story to be hers when she was ready, not something I handed over like a news clip. For now, I protected it the only way I knew how, by making sure no one else could bury it. By noon, I had redundant copies stored on 2 municipal data mirrors and 1 private fail-safe drive air-gapped in a grounded cabinet at the lab, all with full hash validation. If Marbel or anyone else on the board wanted to delete it, they'd need a court order and a server breach team, and even then, they'd be too late. Around 2 p.m., I walked the long way to the west gate and passed by the clubhouse parking lot. Nevin was already there, crouched next to the electrical housing box, screwing the panel back into place. He didn't look up when I stopped. "Circuit jump again?" I asked casually. He grunted. "They keep overloading the feed when they stream the seminar recordings. System's not built for 4K with simultaneous internal archiving." I let that hang in the air. "Or maybe it's being overworked, cutting out all the parts they don't want anyone to see," I said. He finally stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "You have no idea. I might have more than you think." He looked around, then gestured toward the maintenance corridor between the pool gate and the clubhouse. We walked in silence, footsteps echoing off the narrow concrete. "There's a file I tried to keep," he said low. "From a kid last fall. Same type of incident. Marbel said the footage was being archived off-site for legal processing. Next time I checked, it was gone." "You knew?" "I suspected, but I didn't have what you have." I didn't ask how he knew what I had. I didn't need to. "Someone's going to try to shut this down," he added. "She always finds a way to make it about decorum or privacy or neighborhood unity. They won't get the chance." He nodded once, then walked off without another word. He'd done his part. He'd pulled the thread. I spent the rest of the afternoon finalizing the presentation. Not a slideshow, not a speech, just the footage. Synced, clean, undeniable. I built an overlay that would show all 3 angles side by side, with timestamp trails glowing beneath. A single blinking line tracked across all 3, ticking through the exact moment of contact, the audio burst, and the edit jump. It was brutal in its simplicity. That's what made it powerful. As night approached, I walked past the reading arch again, Lyra's arch. She wasn't there. The vines had overgrown a bit. A stray bookmark, weather-warped and curling, peeked from the crack in the bench slat. I picked it up. It was one of hers, laminated with gold flecks. A quote from a novel she read with her mom. The ink had faded, but I remembered the line. Even the quietest flame can burn down a kingdom if the wind shifts right. I folded it into my palm. They wanted to humiliate her. They wanted her small, silent. But they forgot something. She's mine. By the time I got home, an email was already waiting. Subject: Incident Response Request. HOA Board Meeting, Emergency Session. From Board Admin, on behalf of Marbel Royston. Details: You are invited to speak during the board's emergency session tomorrow evening. Please be advised, this is a courtesy, not an obligation. Disruptions will not be tolerated. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just the implication that I was being allowed to speak, if I behaved. I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The board had just extended an invitation to the one person in the neighborhood who knew how to weaponize their silence. Tomorrow, I'd make sure they understood exactly what they tried to erase. The flash drive showed up in my mailbox just after dawn. No envelope, no label. Just matte black plastic tucked inside a utility bill, wedged tight like someone had slipped it in by hand. I didn't need a note. I recognized the drive model. It was the kind issued to HOA volunteers for internal transfers. Most residents never saw one. I plugged it into my air-gap terminal, heart already bracing for what I might find. It contained exactly one file, a screen recording. The HOA's internal dashboard flickered to life. Login credentials input by someone with admin clearance. The cursor moved steadily, methodically. A folder titled Incident Archive, Fall Session was opened. Inside, 12 video files, all dated within the last year, all with resident complaint tags. Code 3.1b, skirt length, read one. Code 2.4, poolside attire, read another. And then the one that made my jaw tighten. Incident, Rain Lyra Thou 1. The cursor highlighted it, right-clicked. Delete permanently. A system warning popped up. Action irreversible. Are you sure? The answer came with mechanical certainty. Yes. End of recording. 12 erasures, 12 families, one method. I closed the file. My breath felt shallow. The metadata matched Nevin's login, but the recording itself had been created through a third-party screen capture tool, meaning he recorded himself committing the purge, not to show compliance, to show what they made him do. I locked the file in the same folder as the synced footage, time-stamped, hashed, mirrored. Nevin hadn't just passed the torch. He'd handed over the matchbook. By noon, I saw him near the pool fence, checking the water sensors like always. Same jacket, same neutral expression. But this time, he didn't look away when I approached. I got it, I said quietly. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. Then you know how far it goes. I didn't respond. She told me it was community protection, he went on, that it wasn't personal, but it always was, every single time. His hands trembled, just slightly, not from fear, from memory. The girl before Lyra, he continued, she wore jeans with tears in the knees, got called to the clubhouse. Her mother raised hell. They moved 2 weeks later. House sold under market. I knew the one, Unit 14D. It was back on the listings like nothing had happened. Nevin took a breath. You should know, Marbel doesn't act alone. Board chair signs off on footage requests, and the compliance team filters what gets saved. Does anyone else know? He shook his head. I kept quiet until now. Why now? He looked up, eyes burning without tears. Because Lyra didn't cry, and that scared them. Because when someone doesn't break the way you expect, you realize maybe they're not the one who's weak. I nodded slowly. You saved the right clip, I said. No, he corrected. You did. I just gave it shape. As I turned to leave, he added, they'll come for you next. Quietly, policy language, fines, procedure. I've already got a stack. Then you'd better finish what you started. That night, I didn't eat, didn't sleep. I built. I overlaid the screen recording on top of the incident footage, Marbel pulling the skirt, the HOA feed cutting out, and now Nevin's own cursor confirming every deletion. Frame by frame, One truth layered over another until there was no room left for denial. Then I wrote a single line beneath it. This is what they erased. This is who they tried to erase. I saved the file to a new drive. This one gold, labeled in thick black ink. Exposure, final. And I packed it with me for the meeting. The board had extended a seat at their table. But I wasn't coming to sit. I was coming to burn the table down. I arrived at the boardroom 15 minutes early. Not because I wanted to be the first in the room, but because I wanted to see how they moved when they thought no one was watching. The clubhouse had been rearranged for the emergency session. The usual folding chairs were gone, replaced by a wide U-shaped table wrapped in black cloth. The board sat behind it, each with their own printed nameplate like they were prepping for trial. Bottles of mineral water, HOA seal mugs, microphones that didn't work. It was theater, all of it. Marbel stood at the center, no podium this time. Just her, palms flat against the table, eyes sweeping the room like a judge surveying a courtroom she built herself. She saw me enter and smiled, just like always, tight and gracious, like she was handing me a polite sentence instead of preparing to defend her own. "Mr. Rain," she said, "we appreciate you joining us." I nodded once and said nothing. To her left sat Garth Lohman, HOA chair, a man who had never said a sentence longer than 30 words unless it was copy-pasted from a handbook. To her right, Charlene Wicks, treasurer, already tapping her tablet like she'd rather be in a dentist's chair. Neighbors trickled in behind me. No one spoke above a whisper. A few glanced my way, quickly looking away again. The air was dense with something unspoken, something sharp. Everyone had seen the flyers. Some had seen what happened at the seminar. Fewer still knew what was coming. At 6:01 p.m., Marbel cleared her throat and began. This emergency session was called to address an unfortunate escalation of conflict regarding our modesty standards and recent citation enforcement. While we regret the tension this has caused, we remain committed to protecting the values of Ambergate Hollow. She looked directly at me now. "Mr. Rainey has requested time to speak. We are honoring that request in the spirit of transparency. We ask that all remarks remain civil and constructive." I opened my laptop and placed the drive beside it. No dramatics, just motion. "I don't need long," I said. "Just your attention." The room dimmed as I cast the synced footage to the boardroom projector. 3 angles, no edits, no commentary. Marbel's expression didn't change at first, but Charlene shifted in her chair. Garth's mouth twitched. At frame 16:21:11, the moment her hand reached forward and pulled, the room fell completely silent. I let it play through. Then I triggered the overlay. Audio, metadata, deletion logs, Marbel's hand, Lyra's flinch, the 7-second blackout. The file title with my daughter's name, erased, Nevin's cursor. The screen recording of compliance commands executed under pressure. No narration, no accusation, just evidence. When it ended, I turned the lights back up and faced the table. "I didn't come here to argue," I said. "I came here to return something that didn't belong to you, the truth." Marbel's fingers twitched against her water bottle. "That footage was illegally obtained," she said evenly. "Our security systems are private. You had no right to access them. The footage came from a municipal poll cam. It's public infrastructure. Yours was redacted. Mine wasn't. Regardless, your presentation violated HOA policy." "Which policy?" I interrupted. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Charlene turned to Garth. "We need to recess. This isn't authorized." "You authorized it," I said, nodding at the screen. "You signed the deletion order. You let her do this. And now the community knows." A murmur rose from the back. Not outrage. Not yet. Just awakening. A few parents exchanged looks. One woman took out her phone. Another held her child's hand tighter. Garth stood. "We'll need to deliberate on the material presented. Mr. Rain, you'll receive formal response within 5 business days." I nodded, slowly. "That's fine. I already sent the file to the city's ethics committee and to the Office of Public Oversight. This meeting was a courtesy." I closed the laptop. "I won't be needing another." Then I turned and walked out. Not rushed, not dramatic, just done. The email came at 3:22 a.m. Subject line, HOA Board, request for cooperation. No greeting, no signature, just a single sentence. We ask that you refrain from further distribution of sensitive material while internal review is underway. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to the same oversight agencies I had already looped in, adding the line, "Attempt to suppress publicly significant footage, post-confirmation of misconduct." By morning, word had already spread past the gates of Ambergate Hollow. Not because of me. I hadn't posted the footage, but someone had. I saw it first on a parenting forum. Cropped clips, blurry overlays, subtitles added by someone who only had the audio feed. They didn't even get Lyra's name right. But the image of Marbel grabbing a child's skirt mid-sentence was enough. Within hours, the clip migrated to local news aggregators. The headlines softened it. HOA enforcement sparks outrage. Community code sparks dress debate. But the footage didn't lie. Neither did the comments. I sat at the kitchen table, reading them with my coffee going cold. This isn't about policy. This is about power. Who the hell thinks they can touch a child to enforce decorum? Hope the parents sue the entire board. I didn't want the attention. I just wanted accountability. But attention, it turns out, doesn't ask permission. By noon, the HOA's inbox had shut down due to volume. By 3 p.m., a notice went out. Emergency board meeting, closed session. And beneath that, in smaller font, due to community unrest, media presence will not be allowed on HOA property. I almost laughed. Unrest, they were the ones who started it. And now they were afraid of what happened when people actually saw. Lyra hadn't said much all morning. She stayed upstairs, tucked into the same corner she always did when the world started feeling jagged. But at one point, she came into the kitchen, barefoot and quiet. "Did they call you?" she asked. I shook my head. "They emailed, tried to ask me to stop." "Are you going to?" "No." She nodded, chewing her lip. Then, "I saw the video." I looked up. "Someone sent it to Kara," she added. "It's all over now." I watched her face carefully. I expected embarrassment, maybe anger, but all I saw was this strange calm, like the part of her that had felt invisible finally had weight. "You okay?" I asked. "I think so." She paused. "It's weird. Everyone's talking about it, but I don't feel like they're talking about me, just what happened." "That's because you didn't do anything wrong." "I know," she said, then softer. "But now everyone else knows too." It wasn't pride in her voice, not quite. It was something closer to reclamation. That evening, I got another message, this time from Nevin. No text, just a photo. A screenshot of Maribel's calendar, captured from her unlocked office tablet during a maintenance check. The event circled in red. Resignation statement draft, internal submission. It was scheduled for the next day. I stared at the screen, not moving. It wasn't official, not yet. But the ground was shifting. Nevin sent another message. "Charlene's folding, Garth's trying to block it, but the vote's coming." And then one more. "They're scared of you." I typed back. "They should be scared of her." He didn't ask who I meant. That night, I returned to the arch. The vines had been trimmed, someone had swept the path, and placed at the foot of the bench was a single folded piece of paper, held down by a small painted rock. Lyra's name was written on it. I unfolded it slowly. "You reminded me my daughter deserves to feel safe here too. Thank you." No name, no address, just that. I stood there a while, letting the quiet settle. Letting the weight of what we started land. The board had circled their wagons. But they were already bleeding, and tomorrow, when Marbel stepped into that room to try and salvage her control, she wouldn't be facing a violation appeal. She'd be facing exposure. The room was full by the time I arrived. Not just board members and HOA regulars. There were parents I'd never seen before, teenagers with arms crossed, a woman holding a baby in one arm and a clipboard in the other. Even the elderly couple from the corner lot, the ones who usually avoided conflict like it was catching, were standing against the back wall, watching with their arms locked like a barricade. They'd moved the meeting to the clubhouse auditorium, the largest space on the property. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. Too many people showed up. The board sat at a long plastic table across the stage. Garth Lohman looked like he hadn't slept. Charlene Wicks kept tapping her stylus against her notepad. The others looked ready to bolt. And then there was Marbel, still composed, still smiling that tight press conference smile. But her eyes were doing something different now. They weren't scanning the room. They were tracking threats. Her voice cut into the mic. We're here tonight to clarify concerns regarding recent policy enforcement and to address the spread of unapproved footage taken without board consent. There was a murmur from the audience. Garth cleared his throat and leaned into his own mic. This meeting will remain orderly. Disruption will result in removal. He didn't sound confident. He sounded like a man reading a script written by someone who no longer controlled the room. I stood near the front, but I didn't speak. Not yet. This wasn't my moment. Not anymore. A hand went up in the crowd. It was the woman with the baby. My daughter was warned at the pool last week for wearing a one-piece with a cover-up, she said. I want to know what law gives this board the right to police 10-year-olds. No one answered. Another voice rose. What dress code are you even using? I looked through the HOA manual. Section 3.1b hasn't been updated since 1998. More murmurs, this time sharper. Then, why is there no appeal process for violations involving minors? Then another, how many incidents have been erased from the HOA video archive? Marbel raised her hand, voice calm. There's a great deal of misinformation circulating. The footage being referenced was obtained through unauthorized surveillance and violates community privacy protections. I finally stepped forward. That footage was mine, I said, and it was recorded by a municipal camera on public infrastructure. The only privacy it violated was yours, because you didn't want anyone to see what really happened. Silence, then a voice from the back. We saw it, followed by another. So did the police. Charlene shifted in her chair. Garth reached for his water and missed the bottle entirely. Marbel's voice lost its varnish. You manipulated that footage. No, I interrupted. I time-synced it. Your version was cut, 7 seconds. And then I received internal logs, signed by your security liaison, showing intentional deletion of that clip and others like it. 12, to be exact. All minors, all girls. A gasp. And then from the side door, Chief Rel Mornes stepped into the room. He wasn't in uniform, just slacks, a dress shirt, and the look of someone who'd come not as a cop, but as a witness. He didn't take the mic. He didn't have to. I reviewed the footage independently, he said, and I've submitted a full incident report to the district attorney's office for review. We are currently investigating whether any civil or criminal violations occurred. Marbel went pale. Garth pushed back from the table like he could physically distance himself from the fallout. Charlene finally spoke. I move for immediate resignation of Vice President Royston pending full investigation. Marbel stood abruptly. This is a coordinated smear campaign. You're all letting one man and a glitchy video destroy. It's not the video, someone called out. It's what you did. She turned toward the crowd, but there was nothing left to salvage, not even sympathy. Just a sea of eyes that had already made their decision. And then Lyra stood, from the side aisle, quiet, unshaking. She didn't break me, she said, but she tried. The room fell dead quiet. That's when the clapping started. The applause wasn't loud, it wasn't wild. It started slow, uncertain, unsure if it was allowed. But once it began, it didn't stop. It spread like a ripple, quiet hands striking louder, rising to fill the entire room with the kind of sound that doesn't cheer victory but honors survival. Lyra didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She just stood there with her arms at her sides and her eyes level. Marbel Royston sat frozen behind the table, watching the room tilt without her. Garth looked like he wanted to disappear. Charlene's eyes had turned glassy, but she didn't speak again. For a moment, everything held still. Then someone from the crowd stood. I motion for a public vote, the woman with the baby said, to remove Marbel Royston from the board, effective immediately. The room stirred. No one objected. Charlene cleared her throat. As treasurer and acting chair of this meeting, I second the motion. Another parent stood, then another. Hands rose. One by one, voices rang out. Aye, aye, aye. Even Garth raised his hand, reluctantly. Marbel stared at them, at all of them. The same people who used to nod when she passed, who let her speak for them without question. Now, not one of them was looking at her. She pushed back from the table, the legs of her chair screeching against the tile. This is illegal, she hissed. You're not following proper procedure. Chief Morns stepped forward, calm and unhurried. "This is a community decision, not a courtroom," he said. "The criminal investigation is separate, but what happens to your seat, that's up to them." Marbel looked around like the walls were closing in. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She reached for the stack of flyers in front of her, the ones labeled HOA Standards Committee, the same ones she'd had printed for the seminar series. Her hand trembled. The stack fell sideways. The flyers scattered across the floor like white leaves. No one moved to pick them up. Finally, she turned to me. Not with anger, not with fury, with something worse, contempt. "You think you're a hero, Mr. Rainey," she said, "but all you've done is hand the mob a target. You didn't fix anything." I met her eyes without blinking. "I didn't come to fix you." She shook her head, gave a bitter laugh, and walked out. The door shut behind her like the end of a storm, and for a few seconds all that remained was the silence she left behind. Then Charlene stood. "There will be a special election held within 30 days. Until then, the board will operate in interim status. Effective immediately, all dress code citations against minor residents are suspended. Previous violations will be reviewed for removal. Parents with affected citations may file for full reversal." It wasn't eloquent, it wasn't sweeping, but it was enough. I looked over to Lyra. She was sitting again now, near the aisle. Her head was tilted, eyes locked on the table, like she wasn't sure any of it was real yet. I moved to her slowly, sat in the empty seat beside her. "You all right?" I asked. She nodded. "I think so." She hesitated, then added, "I didn't think it would end like that." Neither did I. For the first time in days, she smiled, barely there, but real. Behind us, people began to file out. Quiet conversation hummed through the air, the kind of murmur that follows something bigger than words. Then the woman with the baby passed by, pausing just long enough to touch my shoulder. "Thank you," she said. "For not backing down." I gave a small nod. There wasn't much to say, because this wasn't about me. It never was. The next morning, I walked past the breezeway. Someone had repainted the arch overnight, fresh white wood, new vines planted at the base, and hanging from the center beam, hand-carved and stained with care, was a new wooden sign, Lyra's Arch. The sign over the arch stayed up. No one questioned who put it there. No one petitioned for its removal. In a neighborhood that once measured skirts and threatened fines over fence paint, no one even brought it up at the next board meeting, because everyone knew what it meant. It wasn't just for Lyra, it was for every kid who'd ever felt like they had to shrink themselves to fit into someone else's definition of appropriate. It was for the quiet ones who didn't fight back in the moment, but remembered. It was a stake in the ground. She walked under it 3 days later, arms full of paperbacks, a blanket tucked beneath one elbow, no fanfare, no crowd, just her and the bench and the sunlight through the leaves. I didn't go with her. She asked to go alone. That was the win. The HOA didn't collapse after Marbel left. They restructured, held their special election. Charlene stepped down before the vote. Garth didn't run again. Half the new board came from parents who never thought about running until someone made them ask where the power really lived. The dress code? Gone. Replaced by a single paragraph. All residents, regardless of age, are free to dress in a manner consistent with their personal dignity and comfort, provided safety and public decency laws are followed. I printed it, framed it, hung it in the garage. The citation against Lyra was formally rescinded. A letter of apology was issued. She never read it, just asked if she had to respond. I told her no. Some apologies are just paperwork. Marbel moved out. Not right away, but within the month. Rumors floated about pressure from above, about the investigation, about a quiet legal settlement with one of the other families. I didn't care. What mattered was that she would never again hold a clipboard over a child's body and call it community standards. Nevin stayed. He never asked for thanks. He just kept doing what he did, checking lights, adjusting cameras, cleaning up behind the scenes. But he stood taller now, straighter, like a man who'd finally stepped out of a shadow of his own making. He handed me a manila envelope one afternoon near the maintenance shed. Inside were printouts, timestamps, logs, copies of policies that had been used like shields to justify the erasures. "Keep them," he said, "just in case someone forgets what happened." I did. And then, when the time felt right, I deleted the footage. Not because I wanted it gone, because we didn't need it anymore. The truth had already done its work. One night, Lyra came into the kitchen with her tablet and showed me something. It was a comment thread on a quiet community forum. Parents from another HOA halfway across the state were linking to news coverage of our story. They were organizing, making noise. I saw the look in her eyes. "You change more than this place," she said. "No," I told her. "You did." The moment still lived on 3 servers. The file sat in the oversight archive, logged and labeled. The city passed a policy banning any HOA from altering or deleting surveillance footage without independent review. But none of that mattered as much as the girl beneath the arch, finally reading again without fear. And that was enough. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.